The morning session we discussed three pramanas, three or yes, three forms of indirect knowledge, that is recollection, recognition, and what I call generalization. The word for that is tarka, but I mean many times you will find the translation of the word tarka as inductive generalization or inductive reasoning, rather not generalization, inductive reasoning, because the word tarka conveys reasoning, therefore they translate it as reasoning. But if you see the definition of inductive definition of tarka, then in that definition itself there is no element of reasoning involved there. It is supposed to be based on observation and non-observation, but it is just the knowledge of some general truth, that's all. How that knowledge arises, maybe it arises through some kind of reasoning, but tarka itself is not reasoning. Anyway, now we come to the last two pramanas, last two indirect pramanas or paroksha pramanas, and one is inference and the other is verbal testimony, anumana and agama. So after discussing tarka as pramana, Jainas discuss inference and then verbal testimony. In fact, inference and verbal testimony are the pramanas accepted by many systems. They are accepted by Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Purvamimamsa and Vedanta. In spite of that, the Jaina conceptions of these pramanas are worth discussing because of their uniqueness. So let us discuss the Jaina conceptions of inference and verbal testimony. Inference. Like Buddhists, Jainas understand inference, that is inferential knowledge, as the knowledge of the target property, sadhya, based on the knowledge of the reason, reason property, that is hetu. But we have seen that Buddhists insisted on the triple character of the reason property, that is Dignaga said that it is knowledge of target property based on the knowledge of reason property which has triple character. That is how they define inferential knowledge. Now similarly, Dharmakirti also used the same terminology, but while explaining triple character he introduced the notion of necessary relation. That is, hetu should have triple character means hetu should possess the three characteristics which are based on necessity, binding relation. But he also used the language of triple character, that is Trairupya of hetu or Trirupa hetu. We have seen that according to Dignaga's theory of three features of the reason property, a good reason property should have all the following three features: existence in the provable property bearer, that is paksha sattva, sapaksha sattva and vipaksha asattva, these are the terms. So existence in similar cases, non-existence in dissimilar cases. From Siddhasena Divakar onwards, we find a serious concern among Jaina logicians regarding the nature of inference. Though Siddhasena's theory of inference was inspired by Dignaga, it also deviates from Dignaga's theory of inference in an important respect. Siddhasena and later Jaina logicians vehemently criticized Dignaga's theory of triple character of reason property. So according to them, this Trairupya doctrine itself is not correct, and they are not just saying that out of three characteristics only two will do, or that in addition to three we have to add some characteristics, and these were some of the reactions of some other systems. We have seen that Dharmakirti used the language of triple character, but he said that ultimately that triple character boils down to two characteristics, that is Vyapti and Paksha Dharmata, that is invariable concomitance and existence of hetu in Paksha. On the other hand, Naiyayikas, Nyaya system, while they criticized this triple character doctrine of Dignaga, they said that 3 are not sufficient, you have to add 2 more. And therefore we find that Nayayika said that in addition to 3 there should be, instead of 3 characteristics, we should talk of 5 characteristics. And corresponding to 3 characteristics, Dignaga had accepted 3 fallacies. So corresponding to 5 characteristics, Nayayikas accepted 5 fallacies. There is violation of 5 characteristics result into 5 fallacies. Fallacies of Hetu, fallacies of reason property. Whereas Jainas said that these so-called 3 characteristics are neither necessary nor sufficient. So this triple character doctrine itself is wrong, and they advocated a single character doctrine, that Hetu should fulfill a single characteristic, and that was non-explicability without target property. That is, reason property is a good reason property if it has this one characteristic, namely it cannot be explained without accepting target property. This single property is necessary and sufficient according to them. So later Jaina logicians argued out in detail how the triple character model is unsatisfactory. The argument can be presented in 2 major steps. Fulfillment of the 3 conditions is not necessary for a reason property in order to be sound. That is, 3 characteristics are not necessary. It is possible that without fulfilling some of the characteristics, a reason property can be a good reason property. And secondly, fulfillment of the 3 conditions is not sufficient for a reason property in order to be sound. That is, it is possible that we may have a reason property which fulfills all the 3 conditions which Dignaga stated. Even then, that reason property could be a bad reason property. That is, it could be an unsound reason. So in both ways, this triple character doctrine is not satisfactory. Jainas try to establish the 2 steps by giving counter examples. Now, so first step would be that triple character is not necessary for soundness of inference. That is, even without satisfying some of the conditions, out of the 3 conditions, without satisfying some of the conditions, a reason property can be a good reason property. For instance, the first condition from the triple character of reason property means that the reason property exists in the provable property bearer. That is, the smoke exists in the mountain, for example, exists on the mountain, where the target property is to be proved. That is, reason property exists in the provable property bearer, where the target property is to be proved. This implies that ultimately reason property and target property are supposed to reside in the same locus. That is, if it generally this is the idea of samana adhikaranyas, having the same locus. Reason property and target property should be available in the same locus. It should not happen that reason property occurs in one locus and target property in another locus, and still we are able to prove target property on the basis of reason property. This was the meaning of that condition. But Jainas hold that we can find certain inferences where reason property is in one locus and target property in some other locus, and even then the reason property is a good reason property. So the condition that reason property should be there in the property bearer, provable property bearer, this condition itself is not satisfactory. So against this, Jainas pointed out that there can be a sound inference in which the 2 properties exist in different loci. One sees the reflection of moon in the pond and infers from that the existence of moon in the sky. In this inference, the moon reflection in the pond is the probans, I am using the word probans, which means reason property, and the existence of moon in the sky is the probandum, that is target property. Now their loci are different and remote. So reason property exists in the pond and target property exists in the sky. But the inference becomes sound because we can say that the moon reflection in pond water cannot be explained without accepting the existence of moon in the sky. So if we have this kind of situation, that reason property cannot be explained without accepting the target property, then we can infer target property on the basis of reason property. It is not necessary that reason property and target property should belong to the same locus. So in order to show that, so the first condition out of the three conditions, first condition is not necessary. In order to show that the other two conditions from the triple character reason property, triple character of reason property are not necessary, Jainas cite an example of a good reason which has everything as the property bearer. So that is called in Sanskrit Sarva Pakshaka Anuman, where the paksha, that is provable property bearer, is all. Suppose you are trying to prove something about all objects in the world. Buddhists, for example, will be inclined to prove that everything is momentary, all things are momentary. And Jainas are inclined to prove that all things are anekanta, that is, they are multifaceted. Now, this is an inference about everything in the world. Now, when there is an inference about everything in the world, then everything, all objects, the set of all objects, that becomes the provable property bearer. Now, in this kind of inference, we don't have similar cases and dissimilar cases. Why? Because everything is the provable property bearer. Similar cases should always be outside the provable property bearer. Dissimilar cases also, there is sapaksha and vipaksha, should be outside paksha. Similar cases and dissimilar cases should be outside the provable property bearer. Now, are such inferences permitted at all? I mean, this is again one of the controversial issue. Nayayikas, for example, do not accept this kind of inference at all. This, according to them, is a fallacious inference, and they call it, the fallacy is called anupasamhari, where I mean a kind of inconclusiveness, where you are where sarva is the paksha. And the main reason is that in that kind of inference, because there are no similar cases and no dissimilar cases, you cannot point out the similarity with the similar cases and dissimilarity with the dissimilar cases. So you cannot also have vyapti which can be demonstrated in terms of examples, because examples should always be outside the provable property bearer. So you may just state the vyapti statement, that is invariable concomitance, but that invariable concomitance cannot be established on the it will have no example outside the provable property bearer. Whereas these people, that is Buddhists and Jainas also, they would say that in such cases you can have vyapti, but that is called internal vyapti, internal pervasion, internal invariable concomitance. Both Buddhists and Jainas distinguish between two types of invariable concomitance, internal and external. And internal say means that it is internal to the provable property bearer, and external means outside provable property bearer. If invariable concomitance can be seen outside provable property bearer, then it will be external invariable concomitance. For example, in smoke fire case, we can say that outside the mountain we see examples where smoke and fire coexist, where both are absent. So this, the vyapti, that is the invariable concomitance that we have there, is demonstrable outside the provable property bearer. But sometimes, I mean, in other words, when the relation between reason property and target property is analytic, there we don't go in search of examples. Now, here generally when they talk of internal pervasion or internal invariable concomitance, they are the cases of analytic relation, which follows by just the definition, by the definition of the subject term, the predicate term follows. So it is not necessary to go for empirical instances which will substantiate this type of invariable concomitance. So, for example, when Buddhists try to prove that everything is momentary, for them, if you understand the concept of real, which according to them real means that which has a function, by analyzing this concept itself we can derive momentariness. And therefore, independently of example, just by understanding the concept of Sat, we can prove that things are momentary. And therefore, there can be internal pervasion. The momentariness can be proved on the basis of internal pervasion, and it is not necessary to check whether this is momentary, that is momentary, and then after observing many momentary things, you generalize that everything which is real is momentary, and therefore this thing is momentary. This is not how we reason in that kind of inference, but by understanding the concept of Sat itself, we come to the predicate part, that is momentariness. Similarly, Jainas are also having the same kind of distinction between internal pervasion and external pervasion, and here now only their concept of Sat is different. We have seen that according to them Sat is Utpada Vyaya Dravya Yuktam Sat, that is that which has origination, destruction and stability. Now from this particular definition of Sat, particular conception of Sat itself, this Anekanta nature follows. So that reality is Anekanta, can be established without say searching for similar cases and dissimilar cases, and therefore we can have an inference in which everything is the provable property bearer. Now in this kind of inference, since there are no similar cases and no dissimilar cases, in the Dignaga's triple character condition, Hetu, that is the reason property, should exist in the provable property bearer, it should exist in similar cases, at least in some similar cases, and it should be absent from dissimilar cases. Now here there are no similar cases, no dissimilar cases, and therefore the second and third condition also are not fulfilled. So that is what Jainas are arguing, that in the inferences of this kind, this out of the three characteristics, the second characteristic and the third characteristic are not found, and even then it is a good inference, it is a sound reason property. So take for example the inference everything is non-absolute because it is real. According to Jainas, anything real, its very essence is characterized by opposite characteristics, namely origination, destruction and continuity, and hence is non-absolute. Hence the inference is sound. But does the reason property fulfill the second and the third condition? The problem here is, since everything is the provable property bearer, there is nothing outside it. Hence there are no similar cases, no dissimilar cases, hence the reason property can be neither existent nor non-existent in them. Jainas in this way show that a reason property can be sound even if it does not possess all the three features of good property bearer prescribed by Dignaga. Now this is about, one part. One part is that the triple character is not necessary. Now the second part is triple character is not sufficient. That is, we can have an inference in which all the three conditions are fulfilled, which Dignaga wants that Hetu should fulfill. Even then, that Hetu, that is the reason property, is not sound. So by making this claim, Jainas are arguing that it is possible that a reason property may fulfill all the three conditions of a good reason property as stipulated by Dignaga, but it may fail to be good. A counter example which substantiates the claim would be this. These fruits are ripe because they belong to the same branch like the eaten fruit. Now we have to imagine a situation that there is a branch of a tree where there are many fruits, and we just pick up a few fruits and eat, and we find that they are sweet, and on the basis of that we infer that all the remaining fruits of that branch must be ripe because they belong to the same branch, like the eaten fruits of that branch. Now, it is possible that it may happen accidentally that all the remaining fruits are ripe, but does it necessarily follow from this inference? That is the question. In this example, these fruits is a provable property bearer, ripeness is the target property, being fruits of the same branch is the reason property. The ripe things other than these fruits are similar cases, and the unripe things other than these fruits are dissimilar cases. Now, this is actually a technique which one has to master in order to examine the inferences in Indian tradition. In every inference, when somebody presents an inference, immediately we have to identify what is the provable property bearer, what is the target property, what is the reason property. On the basis of that, what are the similar cases, what are the dissimilar cases, and then does the reason property exist in that provable property bearer or not, whether it exists in the similar cases or not, whether it exists in the dissimilar cases or not. And examining all that, we can come to the conclusion that yes, this reason property fulfills all the three conditions. Now, in this particular example, you can verify that the reason property fulfills all the three conditions. It exists, I mean, it is about the remaining fruits, and those ripeness is the target property, and being fruits of the same branch, because they are fruits of the same branch, that is the reason property, and the ripe things other than these fruits are similar cases, and unripe things other than these fruits are dissimilar cases. It so happens in this example that all the fruits belonging to this branch are ripe, and no unripe fruit belong to this branch. Hence, the reason property fulfills all the three conditions, but here there is no necessary relation between reason property and target property. The possibility cannot be ruled out that a fruit can belong to this branch without being ripe. Through such examples, Jainas point out that the triple character of the reason property is not the sufficient condition for its soundness. In place of the three characteristics of the reason property, Siddhasena introduced the notion of single characteristic as the defining feature of a good reason property, namely non-explicability otherwise, anyatha anupapatti. That is non-explicability of reason property without target property. Actually, it is quite possible that Jainas have derived this particular notion from Mimamsakas. When Mimamsakas talk about one pramana called Arthapatti, they explain Arthapatti, I translate as implication, some people translate it as postulation. Now, the example is that, a person called Devadatta, he claims that he does not eat at daytime, and for 15 days I have been observing him, and he is getting fatter and fatter, and so I conclude that he must be eating at night. So this is an example of Arthapatti, implication, that I cannot explain. I mean, this is based on this non-explicability otherwise. That is, that this Devadatta has become fat cannot be explained without accepting that he must be eating at night. So this particular relation, that is, given some fact, if it cannot be explained without accepting some other fact, then you say that there is a relation of non-explicability otherwise. And Jainas are saying that in the case of inference also we can apply the same relation. That is, given that there is smoke, for example, on the hill, the existence of smoke on the hill cannot be explained without accepting that there must also be fire on the hill. So, and that is according to them both necessary and sufficient. That type of relation of non-explicability otherwise is both necessary as well as sufficient. and this triple character is neither necessary nor sufficient. The idea of non-explicability otherwise can be explained with reference to smoke fire inference, as I said. Here the point Jainas are making is that the form of the relation between reason property and the target property should be that the former cannot be explained without accepting the latter. This position of the Jainas provides a strong alternative to the triple character theory. Hence, Jainas posed a dilemma. If reason property fulfills the condition of non-explicability otherwise, then where is the need for the three characteristics? And if the reason property does not fulfill the condition of non-explicability otherwise, what is the use of the three characteristics? So, in both ways, three characteristics are neither needed nor useful. So, this is about the peculiarity of the inference as pramana that Jainas accept. No, they are saying that here this criterion is not applicable. That is, it does not fulfill that criterion. That because I have eaten some fruits and they are ripe, on the basis of that, if I say that the remaining fruits also must be ripe, then it can be shown that this particular reason property fulfills the three conditions, but it does not fulfill this non-explicability condition. That because the fruits that I have eaten are ripe, it is not inexplicable without accepting that the other fruits also must be ripe. It is quite possible that the fruits that I have eaten are ripe, but the others are not ripe. This possibility cannot be ruled out. So, this inexplicability without accepting sadhya, this condition is not fulfilled by this particular reason property, and therefore it is not a good reason. So, whether a reason is a good reason or bad reason, it can be established on the basis of this single criterion, and not the criterion called three characteristics is not satisfactory. It is neither necessary nor sufficient. Actually, Dharmakirti was also having the same type of opinion. Instead of he did not leave the language of three characteristics, and because of this tradition, he did not want to completely disobey his guru, and therefore since he has used the language of three characteristics, he did not say that no, this is not acceptable. Instead of that, why not talk of avinabhava? He used the language of avinabhava niyama. That is the law of invariable concomitance. And avinabhava means what? That hetu cannot exist without sadhya. The provable the reason property cannot be there without target property. So, this rule according to him cannot be proved on the basis of observation and non-observation, but only on the basis of causation or identity. That is what he said, and although he used the language of triple character, he said that this existence in similar cases also must be based on necessary relation. And what is necessary relation? Necessary relation is this type of relation, that it is impossible that hetu exists but sadhya does not exist. Not that it just happens. It so happens that hetu does not exist without sadhya, but hetu cannot exist without sadhya. So, this is as good as saying that hetu cannot be explained without accepting sadhya. But Jainas, they could easily say that what Dignaga is saying is wrong, but Dharmakirti could not say that, and therefore he preserved the language of of Dignaga, but poured new meaning in that. Of course, this particular idea of Dharmakirti, that this necessary relation can be only of two types, namely causation or identity, this was not accepted by Jainas. For them, this non-explicability without the target property, this is possible in different ways. It is not necessary that you should restrict it to these two relations, namely identity and causality. Dharmakirti is, according to me, he is more radical. That is, Jainas do not go deeper into this problem of non-explicability otherwise. Anyway, so we come to verbal testimony, Agama Pramana. Jaina theory of verbal testimony as Pramana presupposes their distinction between partial viewpoint, Naya, and authentic verbal knowledge, Agama Pramana. Ordinary language descriptions are the expressions of partial viewpoints. Jainas theorize them through the doctrine of Naya. So again, I mean, this the notion of Pramana, as I said, the Jainas have two conceptions of Pramana. One conception of Pramana is determinate true cognition, but the other conception of Pramana is complete knowledge. And this idea of complete knowledge or holistic knowledge is not opposed to just falsehood, but it is opposed to incomplete cognition or partial cognition. So now this partial viewpoint or partial cognition is the notion of Naya. And according to Jainas, all our when we use language, we generally describe anything only partially. We do not try to give a holistic approach to the object when we describe anything, and therefore our descriptions in our language always express partial viewpoint and not holistic viewpoint, whereas the statements, a proper description, a pramana type of description should express a kind of holistic viewpoint. And he talked about actually three categories, that is a partial viewpoint, holistic viewpoint, and when partial viewpoint is presented as if it is a holistic viewpoint, that is pseudo holistic viewpoint. That is, suppose I say that suppose I am describing suppose I say that a table is impermanent, okay, and then according to Jainas, Jainas would say that in a way table is impermanent, but in a way it is also permanent. So if I just say the table is impermanent, then I am presenting a partial viewpoint. If I say the table is impermanent and impermanent alone, then it is not just partial viewpoint, but I am presenting partial viewpoint as if it is the complete viewpoint, as if it is the complete truth. And if I say that no, in a way the table is impermanent, then I am aware that beyond impermanence there is something about the table, namely a permanence also can be attributed to the table in some sense. So I am aware of the limits of that partial viewpoint, and I am trying to present a kind of holistic viewpoint, and whether it is whole viewpoint, whole understanding or not, that is a different thing, but at least it is a holistic approach. That is, I am going beyond partial viewpoint and trying to give a kind of holistic approach, holistic understanding of the thing. So these are the three, one can say, ways of describing. One way can be, they call Nayabhasa or Durnaya. It is a kind of fallacy of description according to them. When a partial viewpoint is presented as if it is a complete viewpoint, that is a fallacious type of description, and it is called Nayabhasa or Durnaya. If a partial viewpoint is presented just as partial viewpoint, but it is not claimed that it is a holistic viewpoint, and no awareness is shown that it is only a partial viewpoint. In ordinary situation, we just go on describing things. Now those descriptions are just Naya. And if I am also aware that it is just partial viewpoint, and I express this awareness by using the expression like syat. In a way, this table is, suppose you say that this table is non-eternal, I say yes, in a way what you are saying is okay. That means I am accepting what you are saying, but I am also at the same time suggesting that no, I mean, from a certain point of view what you are saying is okay, but not necessarily from every point of view. And therefore, that particular expression, when I use syat, that according to them is pramana type of expression. So, naya bhasa, naya and pramana. So, when with reference to shabda pramana, with reference to verbal testimony, when the idea of pramana is not just the statement made by a reliable person, but the statement which expresses a holistic viewpoint, that is pramana type of statement according to them. Since ordinary language statements express only partial viewpoints, they are not pramana according to them. Pramana in this context means complete knowledge. This is the limit. This is the limit of language. Why I said this, I don't know. Treating partial viewpoints are wholly true, and trying to describe a reality in absolute terms amounts to transgression of the limits of language. Now, the limit of language, I think, is that through language we can express only partial viewpoints, and through language we cannot state the complete truth. We can express the awareness that this is only partial viewpoint and there is something beyond that, but we cannot give a complete description of anything in language. This is the limit of language. But treating partial viewpoint as wholly true and trying to describe reality in absolute terms amounts to transgression of the limits of language. Jainas explains such a transgression of language, a fallacy of description, that is nayabhasa. Now the question arises, what would be the authentic way of describing reality? The Jaina answer seems to be an authentic description should be holistic. Now I take holistic description as that which at least admits its own limitedness and acknowledges that there is something beyond it. Jainas try to serve this function by adding the prefix syat to the statements expressing partial viewpoints. The word syat literally means maybe or possibly. This indicates uncertainty. That is, if you just understand syat as maybe, possibly, then it expresses uncertainty. But when the Lord Mahavira in different dialogues in the Agamas uses the term syat as a prefix in his answers to different questions, he was not expressing uncertainty of any kind. So when Jainas say syat, the soul is impermanent, and syat, the soul is permanent, they do not mean that it is uncertain whether the soul is impermanent or otherwise, but they mean that the soul is impermanent in some respect and also permanent in some other respect. Hence the term syat is interpreted as in some respect, in a way, in a sense, etc. Lord Mahavira's use of the term, which was aimed at presenting an inclusive or holistic metaphysical perspective, later on became a part of the Jaina theory of language in general and verbal testimony in particular. The later Jaina epistemologists presented the doctrine of standpoint-based description in a more general and systematic form so as to apply to all possible descriptive sentences. By considering different mathematical possibilities, Jainas claimed that with reference to any given subject and a predicate, there are exactly 7 acceptable modalities of applying the predicate to the given subject. Hence the doctrine of syat was developed as the doctrine of sevenfold predication, saptabhangi. The sevenfold predication with respect to a simple statement, the pot exists, ghataha asti, may be stated as follows. In a way the pot exists, syat ghataha asti. In a way the pot does not exist, syat ghataha nasti. In a way the pot both exists and does not exist, syat asti cha nasti cha. In a way the pot is indescribable, syat ghataha avaktavyaha. In a way, the pot exists and is indescribable. Syat ghataha asti cha avaktavyaha cha. In a way, the pot does not exist and is indescribable. Syat ghataha nasti cha avaktavyaha cha. In a way, the pot exists, does not exist, and is indescribable. Syat ghataha asti cha nasti cha avaktavyaha. Now, in one way of explaining the 7 statements is as follows. According to Jainas, the existence of a thing is circumscribed by considerations of substance, location, time, and form. And many times they say that whenever you describe a thing, you can describe it in terms of these 4 categories. That is, dravya. Dravya means substance. What is it made of? And this is one question. Then location. Where is that thing? And then time. At what time does that thing belong to? And form. That is, the same thing may undergo transformations, changes. So, in what form that thing is now? Suppose there is an earthen pot with a round shape before me now. Then I can say that in a way the pot exists. Means the pot exists as an earthen thing with round shape before me now. In a way the pot does not exist. Means the pot does not exist as a metallic thing in some other location at some other time with square shape, etc. In a way the pot is both existent and non-existent. Means the pot exists as an earthen thing, etc., but does not exist as a metallic thing. So these I mean, in Sanskrit they call Swadravya, Swakshetra, Swakala, Swabhava. A thing exists in its own dravya, in its own time, in its own location, and in its own state of existence. And it does not exist in its own in some other substance, at some other time, in some other location, and in some other state. That is paradravya, parakshetra, parakala, parabhava. No, that's okay, but it is more linguistic rather than related to science. Now, in a way, the pot is indescribable. Means the pot cannot be described either as existent or non-existent if we consider its earthenness and metallicness, etc., simultaneously. So the question is, suppose we just take this Swadravya thing, Swadravya and Paradravya. The thing exists as an earthen thing, it does not exist as a metallic thing. Now, earthen and metallic, these considerations if we present sequentially, then the answer will be yes and no. Earthen, yes. Metallic, no. But suppose we try to raise the question by presenting these 2 considerations simultaneously. Can you say simultaneously it is earthen and metallic? Then he will not say yes, both yes and no. He will be puzzled. He will say neither yes nor no. So I cannot determine it to be existent. I cannot determine it to be non-existent. So neither existent nor non-existent, this possibility arises. It is a kind of indeterminability when you are presenting the 2 considerations simultaneously. If you present them sequentially, then you can also answer sequentially in the sense of yes as well as no. So, they are trying to avoid logical, breaking the laws of logic. Otherwise, if you say yes and no, then naturally it is a kind of contradiction. If you say neither yes nor no, then also it is breaking the law of excluded middle. But they are trying to avoid that by presenting these types of considerations. That is, simultaneity and sequentiality. That is, if these considerations are presented in sequence, then the answer can be yes and no. And if the considerations are presented simultaneously, then the answer could be indescribable, can't say anything. So this kind of indescribability or indeterminability will be the response. Now once these three major possibilities, that yes, no and indescribability, they are given, then 5, 6 and 7 are just their combinations. So 5 is the combination of 1 and 4, 6 is the combination of 2 and 4, and 7 is the combination of 1, 2 and 4. So in this way they claim that only 7 types of predication are possible. Through the doctrine of Syat, Jainas are suggesting that we can look at the same thing from apparently contradictory viewpoints and accordingly describe it in diverse ways. Or we can interpret the same sentence in diverse ways, such as apparently contradictory descriptions of a given situation seem to be possible. A sentence can be acceptable under one interpretation and the negation of the same sentence is acceptable under another interpretation. So this can be explained in terms of sentence and distinction between sentence and proposition. And the same sentence can be interpreted in different ways, which will give rise to different propositions. The Jaina doctrine of Syadvada presupposes multifaceted and non-absolutistic nature of reality, but the doctrine itself is not about reality, but it is about language. Syadvada in this sense is not object linguistic but metalinguistic doctrine. The doctrine is based on the distinction between sentence and proposition. We are told in logic that an indicative sentence itself is not true or false, but the proposition expressed by it is either true or false. Now suppose we take soul is permanent as a sentence, then it will express a true proposition under one interpretation. That is, if you understand soul as the essential characteristics, focusing on the essential characteristic, namely consciousness, then soul is permanent. So it will be a true proposition under one interpretation and a false proposition under another interpretation. So that is, if you are focusing on the changing characteristics, then soul is impermanent. So under one interpretation, the same sentence is a true sentence. In another interpretation, the same sentence is a false sentence. Now the basic Syat statements can be interpreted as follows. Syat P means there is an interpretation under which the sentence P expresses a true proposition, and Syat not P means that there is an interpretation under which the sentence P expresses a false proposition. Syat indescribable P means there is an interpretation under which whether P is true or false cannot be determined. We saw that through Syadvada, Jainas indicate that there is a sense in which P is true and that there is a sense in which P is false. But they do not specify the sense in which P is true or the one in which P is false. This is an important point of contrast between Jainism and Nyaya. Nayayikas will always demand that in what sense you are saying that it is true and in what sense you are saying that it is false. Jainas generally they will suppress the interpretation and just say that in a way. So in a way they are not explaining in what way. Later on, of course, somebody inquires into the doctrine and asks them on what basis do you say this, then they have to give justification and they have to explain that under such and such interpretation it is true, under such and such interpretation it is false. So they will have to clarify the meaning of Syat or the implication of Syat, whereas otherwise they just would like to say Syat in a way, in a sense, that's all. Jainas and Nayayikas both are concerned with the ambiguities of ordinary language, but their approaches to the ambiguities are different. According to Jainas, the ambiguities of language are rooted in the admixture of categories, which is inevitable in the description of the world. Hence, the ambiguities cannot be overcome completely. they can only be acknowledged by using the devices such as in a way or in a sense. Nayayikas, on the other hand, believe that there is no admixture of categories in the world. Whatever is distinct and determinate and can be expressed in unambiguous language. Take the case of permanence and impermanence of soul. Jainas say in a way soul is permanent, in a way it is impermanent. They would explain it as follows: soul is a substance which has both essential and accidental characteristics. Hence, soul is permanent from the point of view of essential characteristics. It is impermanent from the point of view of accidental characteristics. Nayayikas would say on this that though the accidental qualities of soul undergo change, the substance itself is non-changing. Hence, it is permanent. Nayayikas hold that substance and qualities are essentially distinct, and they are related by the relation called inherence, samavaya. Jainas object to this. According to them, substance and quality are not absolutely distinct. In a way they are different, but in a way they are identical also. The categories of substance and quality in this way get systematically mixed up with each other. According to Jainas, inherence as the relation between inseparable distinguishables cannot be proved. Hence, this kind of situation where identity and difference go together cannot be expressed in clear and unambiguous language. We can only acknowledge this ambiguity by using the expression syat. It is interesting to note that just like Jainas, Madhyamika Buddhists also hold that language cannot capture the reality clearly and distinctly. Just as Jainas entertain apparently contradictory descriptions together, similarly Madhyamikas entertain apparently contradictory alternatives in their deconstructive analysis. Moreover, both Jainas and Madhyamika Buddhists, while describing reality, use the formula of four alternatives, namely is not, both, and neither. Actually, what Jainas what Jainas are calling indescribable can be understood as neither. Neither is nor is not means indescribable. So, these four categories are found, four alternatives are found both in Madhyamika Buddhism and Jainism. But the conclusions they draw from such metaphysical descriptions in terms of four alternatives go in opposite directions. Jainas are inclined to regard all the four alternatives or even more as admissible in some way or the other. Madhyamika Buddhists like Nagarjuna on the other hand are inclined to rule out all the four alternatives. Hence, the Madhyamika approach to reality and language is more eliminative, whereas that of Jainas is more inclusive. Having discussed different types of indirect knowledge, let us come back to their fivefold classification as a whole. The order in which these five pramanas are arranged has a special significance. In fact, a better representation will be as follows. So, earlier we just saw that recollection, recognition, inductive reasoning, inference and verbal testimony. This is how, in this order, Jainas discuss the five types of indirect knowledge. I am only suggesting that after inductive reasoning, you can divide it into two branches. So, on the one hand there is inference, on the other hand there is verbal testimony. And the whole process, that is the whole classification will begin from perception, and in perception we have the last stage, namely dharana. So, there is a kind of continuity in all this. From after dharana we have recollection, then recognition is based on recollection, inductive reasoning is based on recognition, recollection, etc., and inference is based on all these things, and verbal testimony is also based on all these things. The above picture shows how Jainas were talking about a continuous process involved in knowledge. Here the later form of knowledge presupposes the earlier form. Let us start with inference. Inference presupposes the knowledge of invariable relation between sign and signified, that reason property and target property, say smoke and fire. This knowledge of invariable relation is called generalization, Tarka Pramana by Jainas. Generalization presupposes recognition. We cannot generalize the relation between smoke and fire without recognizing the present cases of smoke and fire as similar to the cases seen in the past. But recognition is not possible without recollection. And recollection is linked with perception through retention, which was the fourth stage of perception. Or we can start from perception. The last stage of perception is retention. It causes recollection. Perception and recollection together cause recognition. All these together cause generalization. Generalization gives rise to inference. A parallel process can be identified in relation to the knowledge from verbal testimony. The knowledge from verbal testimony is verbal knowledge. It depends on the knowledge of word-object relation. The knowledge of word-object relation is a kind of generalization. This generalization presupposes recognition, and recognition presupposes recollection of words and objects. So the basic insight in the Jaina classification of pramanas is that knowledge is a continuous and developing process. This provides the rationale for accepting recollection, recognition and generalization as independent pramanas. This insight is not found in other schools of Indian philosophy. Thank you.